We have to remember we have a liver, we have a colon, and we have kidneys that take all of those toxins out of our body. We don't need to get rid of those toxins. But you have to be very careful when you see information like this on social media.
Welcome to the Build Beyond podcast, where we challenge and guide so that you can meet your full potential.
Yeah, it's been a busy time for me.
I'm excited about today's talk because I'm thinking you might change my mind on some stuff today.
Okay. Which do you want to talk about first? How about antioxidants first?
Yes, let's start with antioxidants.
So then we can talk about positive things for you before we go to the cleanses.
Let's start with the positive stuff. So talk to me about antioxidants. What are antioxidants?
All right.
How do you explain this?
So it's difficult to explain. Before I get started, Chris, I do have a really good document that I can put in the show notes that explains the whole process of what antioxidants do.
Okay.
And then I've got some samples of things I can give you too. So pretty much an antioxidant is a chemical we find in plants. And this chemical actually, hold on. I didn't turn my phone off.
I can edit it out.
Okay. So an antioxidant is a chemical that we find in plants that actually protects our cells from damage. We have free radicals, are molecules that float around in our bloodstream, and these free molecules, free radicals, are missing an electron. Most molecules and atoms have two electrons together, and these free radicals are missing an electron. So they go searching for an electron to make their molecule complete. And they do this by stealing, if you would, electrons from other cells. And when this happens, they damage healthy cells, and they cause a change in the cell's DNA. They cause the cell membrane to change. And this interaction causes something called oxidative stress. And researchers are convinced, and have been for years, the research now is just more and more prevalent, that this oxidative stress is one of the major factors in chronic diseases such as obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, and autoimmune disorders. And at the same time, the cell damage is causing this oxidative stress that's putting into play that inflammatory process. So this also causes greater inflammation in our tissues and our cells, which I believe we've talked about before on this podcast, also follows along and increases our risk of obtaining these diseases.
Okay.
So that is it in a nutshell.
That's a good summary.
It's much more complicated than that, but I read a quote from one of the researchers that there is an inverse relationship between our dietary intake of antioxidants and human illness. It's that positive a correlation of knowing that when we don't eat these foods that stop that process, an antioxidant stops that damage right away. It stops that oxidative stress. And that if we don't have enough of these circulating in our body, that it causes disease.
Okay. What foods?
So there's lots of foods, and these foods are some of the same foods we currently talk about being good for your gut health and reducing inflammation in our bodies. So there's several different classes of antioxidants, and the important thing to remember is that all plants have different antioxidants in them, often related to the color of the food. And that it's important to get a wide variety of these things because the antioxidants all work with different cells. So I don't know if you remember the campaign years ago, Eat the Rainbow, that was all about getting all these antioxidants. So some of the most prevalent ones are in phenol compounds, and those include things like dark cherries, berries, dark leafy greens, cocoa, soybeans have phenols in them. When they look at inflammatory markers, these compounds are also some of the greatest at reducing inflammatory markers. The other big one is the flavonoids, which also reduce inflammatory markers. And those are things like weird groups: apples, onions, grapes, wine, soy, just a weird kind of combination of foods. Kale, tea, that's where we get our tea from. I'm drinking my tea now. I try to drink 2 cups a day because it's so full of antioxidants. And then there's ones I think people are more familiar with: ascorbic acid in citrus fruits, beta carotene, which is in orange fruits and vegetables, lycopene is in tomatoes and fruits. And perhaps in the show notes, we can literally provide a list of all of these.
That'd be great.
Which might be a little bit more interesting than me listing them off. But antioxidants, we know, are going to help prevent disease. And when I think back on my career, I've been seeing patients with chronic disease for 35 years. And this is no judgment on the diets of the patients I see. People eat what they're taught to eat and do what they know. But I can say without a doubt that at least 80% of those patients were following diets most of their life devoid of these antioxidants. They were not eating beans and nuts and seeds and fruits and vegetables. And I started noticing this about 15 years ago when I started doing more research on antioxidants. And about 20% of them may do all the right things, and because of genetic factors or hereditary factors, you still can end up with diabetes. But I really have noticed with most of my patients I see with diabetes or obesity in particular, cardiovascular disease is sometimes harder to control, as you know. I mean, there's hereditary factors there.
Yeah.
But I and that's besides the research, that's the other reason I really do believe in this.
Okay. So that's a really convincing sales pitch, and we've been talking for less than 5 minutes. What is the big I don't know, why do people resist it? Because it seems like that's logical. Go eat fruits and vegetables, a variety of colors, whatever you like, whatever tastes good to you, go have it, and have it a lot, routinely every day. Why don't people? What are the big objections that you get?
I think it's intimidating to people, number one. I think a lot of people who didn't grow up in a family with a mother or a father making fruits and vegetables don't know how to prepare them. I think they feel like it takes a lot of time to chop and prepare vegetables and clean them and get fruits and vegetables ready. I think a lot of people think that they don't like them. I think I've talked about this before, where someone says, I don't like any vegetables, and I bring out my list of vegetables and, oh, yeah, I'll eat that and I'll eat that. Or they haven't tried them since they were a child. And let's be real, cookies, chips, popcorn taste better to some people than fruits and vegetables. And when people go to grab a snack, it's really convenient to open up that box or that bag, rather than needing to wash off some grapes or wash the blueberries or peel the carrot and chop it up. So I really think it's convenience. And now at this time, it's budget. I mean, right now, fruits and vegetables are very expensive. And you and I have talked about this. Canned, frozen are fine, and they're a little bit less expensive than fresh. And the fiber may be different in some canned vegetables and fruits, but the antioxidants aren't significantly different. So
that's funny that you mentioned that, because I was looking at a can of green beans the other day we had in the cupboard, and it listed 0 fiber on it. I thought, how can that even be possible?
Yeah, the processing just lowers the fiber.
Interesting.
Actually, but the antioxidants are lowered a little bit, but they're still there. So when I'm trying to get people to eat more of this, I try to teach them how to cook vegetables and try different things. I always tell people to add a fruit at each meal. Simply adding a piece of fruit, a different kind of fruit at every single meal, is pretty easy for most people. And the other thing I often try to get people to do, and listeners are going to say this is a typical dietitian thing, is to eat a huge salad for one of your meals. And I know people don't like salad and they get tired of that, but making that salad different every time you make it, putting different vegetables in there, putting fun stuff like croutons in there, fruit, dried fruit, nuts, seeds, grains such as rice, use whatever leftover things you have in your house, and just make this huge salad. Add some protein to it, whatever meat, chicken, cheese, whatever you like. And if you can do that once a day, you're meeting probably more than 50% of your fiber needs, and you're probably getting your antioxidant bang that day. So you can have what you want for breakfast and lunch. I've got a whole guide that I give my patients on how to throw a salad together with leftover veggies and canned or frozen vegetables that they've cooked and are cooled down. So that's a great way. And then that great smoothie we always talk about. The smoothie with spinach, dark cherries, and blueberries has 3 pretty powerful antioxidants in it. And that's pretty yummy. That's an easy way to get things. But I do think it's difficult if you didn't grow up eating vegetables. And I do think people are intimidated by the time, which is incorrect. Things can be prepared quite easily.
Yeah, the frozen vegetables now, you can microwave them in the bag. We do it for our kids all the time. I know people are freaked out about microplastics at this point, but maybe that's another show topic. But not to say that microplastics are healthy, but if you're trying to if you got a couple toddlers running around and they are hangry and you need to get something that they'll eat in them quickly, microwaving some vegetables, frozen vegetables, and having them scarf down some broccoli is a lot better than crackers or whatever else we have. So,
that's a great idea.
And they last forever. I've got some bags of broccoli that have been in the freezer probably for 6 months because I'll just go buy 10 bags when they're on sale and throw them in a deep freezer.
Great idea.
And then for those who have little kids, you'll know that they love something for like a week and then they absolutely hate it, but then they'll love it again in a couple months. So I know if I go out and buy 10 bags of peas, even if they stop liking it tomorrow, it'll come back in style again at some point. And I'm ready. I've got it in the freezer already ready.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And even I always tell my clients, and this may sound horrible coming from a dietitian, but if the only way you're going to eat a salad with vegetables or have raw bell peppers and carrots and raw broccoli is with ranch dip, do it. That ranch dip might have some fat and some processing, but you're still going to get the benefit of those antioxidants. So I often will tell people that eating fruits and vegetables is something you must do. And any way you can get them in. And we spent a lot of time in my sessions actually talking about how to do that. Okay. So I had to develop some things to help people. And when you look back and you're someone who does that so easily, like you and your family does, it's hard to understand why it's difficult. But when you're that busy mom that is getting kids to school and heading to work, the last thing you want to do is take 10 minutes to make a salad for yourself. And that same mom comes home after sports practices and is exhausted, and then she needs to clean vegetables and make a salad for dinner. I get that. So there are easier ways to get that done, and I give people tips on how to do that. So I can understand a little bit of it. Sure.
Yeah, it's hard. Everything's hard if you've never done it before. And
exactly.
I think that just speaks to the benefit of working with someone like you, because you can look all this up online. We're not saying anything here that you can't find very quickly on Google. But just because the solution or the answer is, simple, it seems simple, it doesn't mean it's easy. Just because it's right there, it's obvious what we need to do to change. Because most people, if you ask them, you're like, what do you need to do to be healthy? Like, well, I should exercise more. I should eat better. Everybody knows. But and then the assumption is that, they don't do it because they don't want to get better or they're lazy, which is not true. It's just, it seems, for whatever reason, certain things just seem impossible. And people feel like, well, there is this level of perfection that I have to meet. And if I don't meet that, then just below that is pointless. It's as pointless as not even starting. So why even do it? And I think the big message for people is that it is not pointless. If you can add in a little bit, if you eat 1 pea a day for a year, and then you eat 2 peas a day, I don't know if that's a good strategy, but it would be better than nothing.
Yeah.
And then you can tap into what I've heard described as the healthy user bias. As you start to do things that you feel are better for you, you feel good about yourself.
Yes.
And you start to feel like, well, what else could I do?
Yeah.
So maybe you can amplify what you're doing. Well, I could do more, or I could add more vegetables in, or maybe I
Right.
could walk more. Maybe I could knock out a few push-ups, or maybe I could meditate,
Mm-hmm.
or I could
Mm-hmm.
read a book, or do whatever I feel like.
Absolutely.
Last
Yeah.
week I feel like I couldn't, but now I feel empowered because I've made
Mm-hmm.
changes and I feel like I can keep going. So
Exactly. I think that's really great points. And starting those small steps. And I will, when people leave my office, they have one thing to work on, and that might be having one piece of fruit a day. And then, like you say, you gradually increase. And I will say the people that I work with that do start changing their eating habits do feel better, and that does empower them to do other things. You had a recent podcast on motivation, which is good. That was great. That's something I encourage people to listen to. You have to find your motivation, and you speak to a point when people start doing things and feel empowered and get the confidence that they can make changes, they do feel better.
I'm not
So that's
surprised you like
great.
that. I'm glad you listened to it, because
Uh-huh.
I don't get many listeners to the podcast, but
Mm-hmm.
that's like straight out of motivational interviewing 101. And as
Mm-hmm.
I told you before, I've become over the last year a student of motivational interviewing,
Mm-hmm.
because I have long. I mean, I don't know how it is for in grad school for you guys, but for us, we're taught to figure out the problem, and
Mm-hmm.
then I come up with the answer, and then I
Mm-hmm.
tell you, the patient, here's what you have to do to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And I fix you, that kind of mentality.
Right.
And then if a patient doesn't do it, then they're non-compliant. They don't want to get better. I mean, they don't teach us to say that, but that's the
Mm-hmm.
gist of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel that way anymore, I guess is
No,
the summary.
I don't
It's
either.
one of those things, like, now I realize, like, oh man, the patient is non-compliant because I'm not doing a good job. I'm not a good
Exactly.
communicator. So I don't,
Exactly.
they don't understand, or it's like,
Yeah,
it's not that they don't think the plan would work, but the plan's impossible for them. They're not going to do it.
exactly.
They can't
Mm-hmm.
stick to it long term. I'm not really listening.
Yeah.
So I I feel like what you're talking about, making some of these small changes with something as simple as adding in an apple and then finding a fruit or vegetable of another color
Mm-hmm.
that at least you don't despise, that you
Right.
can afford,
Yeah.
and then just trying to sprinkle it in somewhere, and there's going to be
Mm-hmm.
benefit from that. So I really like that
Absolutely.
concept.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well,
Oh, so one
oh,
other
go ahead.
thing I want to mention is supplements. So there is a whole slew of supplements that promise all this antioxidant protection as well. So you don't have to eat fruits and vegetables. You can go buy this huge antioxidant supplement that has selenium and vitamin A and vitamin C. So there have not been, from what I researched last night, any studies that have proven supplemental use does the same thing as the food in this protection. There's no studies that say it does not, but they really truly believe there's something else in that plant that you're eating makes that antioxidant more bioavailable to stop that oxidative stress. So supplements aren't always the answer. Certainly, if you're someone that refuses to eat fruits and vegetables, there's no way you're doing it. You're not eating plants. I would probably have you take some sort of supplement that meets 100% of the RDI, but don't feel like it's going to prevent this damage like the actual food does. And the studies have not shown that supplements work in this case. They haven't shown they don't work. Nothing's been done. But it's pretty clear with this particular type of damage we're trying to stop, the food is the better option. I just wanted to mention that.
That's interesting. So in prep for this, I just Googled antioxidant supplements, and
Great.
some very well-known name brands come up. I'm not going to mention them because I'm not here to
Mm-hmm.
slander anyone. But
No.
the main one that came up, my wife Marissa has in the cupboard. She doesn't take it very
Mm-hmm.
often, and I had
Mm-hmm.
actually looked into it,
Mm-hmm.
because I was trying to increase my fiber intake. So
Mm-hmm.
based on everything that she had told me was in it, I was like, oh, surely this has a ton of fiber and has zero
Mm-hmm.
fiber. So I was like, I don't, I'm not into
We're done.
an expensive, gross tasting packet of multivitamin
Mm-hmm.
green stuff. I'll just eat a fruit or vegetable and get the
Uh-huh.
fiber out of it. But the interesting thing is that we have, I think, as human nature, this reductionist idea. So it's like fruits, vegetables have antioxidants, and antioxidants might do these things because free radicals are bad. So I eat the fruits and vegetables and I get the benefit. Therefore, it's specifically because of the antioxidants.
Right.
But yeah, maybe that was part of it, but you're also, there's also other things in there. You know what I mean? If you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, you're not eating other things. So maybe it's things that you're leaving out.
Correct.
You are probably consuming fewer calories. You are consuming more fiber, which has benefits. So we tend to take these foods, and people do it to sell different things. So you could look at it from like broccoli. If you talk to a vegan, like a hardcore vegan, they're going to be able to tell you all the benefits of eating broccoli.
Right.
And they're all true, probably. Now, if you talk to a carnivore, like a hardcore carnivore who doesn't eat vegetables, they're going to tell you all the potentially negative things about eating broccoli, and everything they say is in broccoli. You know what I mean? So how could you have one food that is both amazing for you and terrible for you? Well, because they're taking a reductionist look, and they're only looking at the part of the broccoli that they either like or don't like to make their point.
Yes.
And you would have to look at like, well, people who eat more broccoli, do they have better health outcomes or worse health outcomes? So in this case, I would say the vegans would win, but maybe not, but you're gonna see the same thing when people are debating like animal products.
Right.
And it's just this idea that, well, let's reduce the food down to what we want to talk about. And if we get the result that we want, it must be because of that little piece and nothing else. And if we don't get the result we want, it's because that thing is bad. Insert GMOs or whatever what non-organic food, for a negative viewpoint of that. But I wonder how much of it then is, so you take antioxidant supplements, you don't get the same results. So when you're eating the real foods, is it just the antioxidant properties, or are we looking at like the benefit like of everything else that's in the food, and possibly the benefit of just feeling like you're actually changing your lifestyle to make healthy choices. Therefore, you're changing other things in your life rather than just popping a couple pills in the morning without thinking about it. So
absolutely.
I think this is where like I'm totally on board with everything you said about antioxidants. And then we get to things like supplements and detox diets and things like that. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Like you're taking a really legitimate topic that is really important for people's health, and you are reducing it down to something that you can sell that may or may not be true. And then you're making claims based on maybe some weak evidence, but you're making it sound like, oh, we figured this thing out. You know what I mean? And I think that's where I start to.
You're absolutely right, because they're focusing on that one antioxidant, whatever it is. But the rest of that food has components that are decreasing inflammation, increasing fiber, helping our gut. Yeah, that's a great way to think. Absolutely, I agree with that.
The detox diets are interesting. My wife Marissa, and she's has nothing to do with healthcare. She's marketing for commercial real estate. She's really good at marketing, and so I proposed an idea to her that I think I may do a podcast on, where I'm just going to give her a couple brands, like here's their marketing campaign. Can you pick out the marketing tactics that are universally using? Don't think about the health benefits or if it's right or wrong. Just what are, because she has all these terms like, oh, this is this and this is called this is this tactic or whatever. And I never understand any of it. But I would love, I want to pick her brain and see like,
that'd be
can
cool.
you help people? And not looking at it from a healthcare provider standpoint, just purely from a marketer, like appreciating the superior marketing ability of some of these things. So she's on board. I just don't know if when we'll have time to do it. That may be like
interesting.
That might be a holiday project someday, but
that sounds fun.
So I started Googling and searching for examples of detox diets, because that's inevitably where this leads. Is people are like, well, I'm on board with antioxidants. What's the quickest way I can do this in 6 weeks?
Right.
Insert a detox diet. So I looked at a bunch of them, and I pulled one that I thought did a really good job of representing all of them. And there's I'm ambivalent when I look at it, because I look at this and I go, man, there's so much good stuff in here. I hate to admit it, but there's so much garbage too. Not like garbage as in the plan is bad. Actually, the diet would be superior if people would eat this way, but it's the messaging. And I'm not going to give away where I got this, because it would get inflammatory at that point. But anyway, I took some notes. So they define detox as two common meanings. One, it's like detoxing from drugs or alcohol. So you're going through some type of withdrawal. And that's not what we're talking about here. If you have that problem, this is not your podcast. You can contact me. I'll hook you up with, you need some other help. The second description is of detox is it describes the body's physiological process for rendering chemicals, compounds, hormones, and toxicants less harmful. So you've been exposed to something and it's making it less harmful. And that's what we're really talking about. So according to this document, why would you even need a detox? Well, first, you have you're exposed to toxins. So they're talking about environment. The second thing is they said some people have a genetic predisposition to not being able to detoxify as well as others. So now we're talking about genetics. And then lastly, nutrition. So they're saying the big three are you have an environment, you have your genetics, and then you have food, which I think you could throw into environment, but that's not really what they're talking about, I think. Okay, so I'm on board with this 100%. I'm like 3 pages in now. I'm like, yeah, this seems super logical. And then here's kind of where I start to have questions. So they say toxic symptoms may occur when we get to our personal limit of accumulating toxins and are not able to clear them quickly or efficiently enough. So how do we even measure that? That's one of those things that's like, you're going to throw that out there. Like if this is your justification to get someone on the diet, I feel like you got to throw a measurement tool, or I got to see some references, which they don't provide, where this is something that can be done. They do go on to say they don't provide any references, but this is something that you said. Medical researchers are recognizing more symptoms related to the buildup of toxins, including obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, cancer, fatigue, infertility, allergies, behavior and mood disorders, neurologic conditions such as tremors, headaches, cognitive difficulties, along with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So you mentioned those. So apparently there is some research for that. So that's interesting. So again, I right now I'm on the fence. Okay, I think they're making this sound a little bit more fantastic than it is, but let's keep going. So they very quickly get back on track. And this is, I don't know anything about marketing, but this is, I think, a really good way to do marketing for some of this stuff is like throw in some stuff that like no one can disagree with. And then in between sprinkle in your pseudoscience. So this is, I agree with this next statement. So the goal of this clinically directed metabolic detoxification protocol, it's a fancy name.
It's a fancy
diet,
word.
essentially meal plan, is to provide nutritional support for facilitating the pathways involved in the processing and excretion of toxins. Okay, that sounds good, but again, like how does it accomplish? Like, you're not there is nothing in this to show like how that actually happens, or and they don't even provide any research to show that this is possible. Although I'm sure there is research out there, but I think it would have made it stronger. Then they go on to say again, and I'm on board with this. A detox program results in improved symptoms and increased sense of well-being for most individuals. I'm okay with that, but can we really claim that those results are because of the detoxification? This is what we just talked about. So you're going to change their diet. You're going to improve their diet, and they're probably going to make other lifestyle changes because they feel good about themselves, and they're going to feel better. They're going to have less fatigue, and they're going to have more energy, and they're going to feel better about themselves. Why are we saying that? Well, 100% that's because there's less toxins that we didn't measure. You know what I mean? It's so I have no doubt that all of those things happen, but I don't think it's that complicated. Here's something else that I think is questionable. Specifically, many who participate in this personalized detoxification program, I don't know how personalized it is either. It's just a general recommendation. They describe improvement in pain and fatigue levels, enhanced cognitive function and moods, more effective and satisfying sleep cycles, and weight loss. And again, since I have no doubt that they gain all of these, and that's awesome. And that's why I would actually support someone going on this. But how do we know it's because of toxins or less toxins? Like, and that's the whole thing about this is it's a detox diet. And even if you did measure the toxicity before and after, and the toxicity went down, how do you still know that the results that you got are due to less toxicity? I mean, maybe, but that's why we have controlled studies. You have a control group that has no intervention, and you have a placebo group. You know what I mean? And if that, like, you would have to draw an actual association to make that statement. But because this is fairly unregulated, they can just say these things. The detox food plan provides specific food and nutrition suggestions to optimize the metabolic detoxification experience and lower the burden on the body. Maybe. I mean, they're just saying it's good, but is that really why it's good, or is it? And when you see this, it's a whole food diet. It's an awesome diet. That's the thing, is like, if someone came to me as a patient, like, I'm doing this,
Said I'm doing this.
I would and they start talking about detox, I would be like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm very happy that you're doing this.
Sure.
I wish someone wouldn't have lied to you, but at least you're making a really good choice. So they say the guide offers directions on how to sequence a healthy detox and a wellness plan by providing tips on how to get started, what to eat, what to watch for. So this is awesome because, again, they're throwing in this. I wish they would get rid of this garbage about like this healthy sequence of detox, but they're gonna help you. They're gonna give you a plan and give you a step-by-step process and some guidance on how to improve your nutrition, which is going to improve your health, which I think is awesome. So the plan, this is the plan. This is what it does. It reduces food triggers, so allergies, sensitivities, and intolerances. Again, I don't know how they do that, but yeah, if you're allergic or sensitive or you can't tolerate something, you probably want to cut that out of your diet. Again, I don't know how they do that. I think they're just making broad assumptions. Like the paleo diet doesn't want people eating nightshades, or you know what I mean, things like that. So, and this isn't a paleo diet, but yeah, I'm on board with that. Let's reduce food triggers. It supports liver function. That sounds cool. But if you read the description, they're just emphasizing protein consumption. So again, like eat like me saying eat more protein doesn't sound very interesting. But if I'm like, hey, do you want to do you want to support your liver function? Like, ooh, that sounds, yeah, I want some of that. This diet requires clean and organic foods. Now they completely lose me on this subject because they're talking about certified organic and non-GMO, and we've talked about that before in the carb section. Maybe depending on the farm, but also they make some bold statement here that organic foods use less pesticides. I've heard that's quite the opposite, because you can use pesticides for certified organic, but sometimes they're actually more harsh. I don't know. There's some interesting things out there where like people are hating on glyphosate, but I've read some stuff that said, the amount of glyphosate that we use because it's so effective, it's not at a toxic level where some of these people out there doing certified organic in order to get enough crop yield, because they're not using the commercial pesticides to make money. I don't know. I think it's a bold statement. And I think it's a bold statement that GMOs are inherently toxic for you and we should reduce them, because what food is not genetically modified at this point? Like, what level of genetic modification? Like apples, oranges, like we can't eat basically can't eat anything. Nothing seedless for sure. Now they say tips for minimizing the intake of this stuff is, again, it's like common sense stuff, like not eating rotten fruit. I'm just summarizing. Washing your food. Yeah. Like, I don't know why but they talk about, I don't know if you've heard of like the dirty dozen and the clean 15. So fruits and vegetables that are inherently dirtier than others. I don't know about you, but if someone's like, I love eating strawberries and I'll eat them unless I have to wash them, I'd be like, fine, don't wash them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that it's going to be that big of a deal for you. And then assuring that you're drinking clean water and things like that. So some common sense stuff. They say this provides target it provides targeted antioxidants. And I can get on board with this because that's just a really fancy way to say what you said initially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
It encourages healthy elimination of toxins. That sounds really special, but when you read it, the recommendation for this section is eat more fiber and drink water. So yeah, I don't, again, the marketing
Yes.
here is really
That's
impressive.
interesting.
And then they've got one they ended up with, balances your hormone metabolism. I always get lost when people start talking about hormones because again, if you eliminate sugar and start eating vegetables and you don't feel sluggish anymore, did your hormones, I mean, did you significantly impact, like from day to day, significantly impact, even from week to week, your endocrine system? Maybe, but if you're going to make that claim based on what do you, how are we testing that? And that's one of those things. It's like, you can't just make, you can make these claims because it's technically legal, but you shouldn't. And I feel like people are going to buy this diet. Now I got this for free online, but I'm assuming that it gets you drawn in and you have to pay for something. Sure. And they're going to pay for what you just said in like the first under 5 minutes, you know, and then you can find it on Google for free. So it's just a way of like packaging up this information that everybody knows or is at least has access to, and then making it sound more special than it is. And I'm not going to go into the diet, but it's essentially eat lean meat, eat vegetables and produce that's high in protein, like beans. Eat, you know what I mean? Eat not unprocessed foods as much as possible. It's an excellent diet. It's an amazing diet.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things, like I love the diet. And this is my problem with a lot of stuff. And I talk to my students about this, is I don't really hate on any diets. It's just the marketing, like making it sound like, oh, this is, you know, this is what our ancestors ate, or this is, you know, 3 foods to avoid at all costs, you know, we're going to shut down your metabolism. And it's just this, like, I don't know, this fear mongering and making things sound super complicated. Essentially, if you want me to summarize this diet, is limit your processed foods, limit your sugar, eat foods that are high in fiber, drink plenty of water, and get enough protein.
Which is,
I mean,
the nutrition guidelines that we all would recommend.
Yeah. And then when things change, because inevitably, if you make that switch, you're going to feel better and you're probably going to have health markers change. But is it specifically because you cut out antioxidant, or it cut out the toxins and added it? I'm sure it's part of it. And as I was looking around online, I don't, were you a Simpsons fan back in the day?
I wasn't. No.
Okay. I grew up on The Simpsons. So it made me think about this. I don't know, this one thing that popped in my head. I'm going to share this with you because I found the clip. Let's see if I can share my screen. Can you see that?
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Not a bear in sight. The Bear Patrol must be working like a charm.
That's specious reasoning, Dad.
Thank you, honey.
By your logic, I could claim that this rock keeps tigers away.
Oh, how does it work?
It doesn't work.
Uh-huh.
It's just a stupid rock.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see any tigers around here, do you?
Lisa, I want to buy your rock.
That's great. That is the world we live in right now.
Basically. And it's that way for
this liquid. I've got this pill.
It's that way for it's that way in so many different things. I mean, I see it in pain management. The way the best analogy I could come up with, especially to help people who are not in healthcare, it's like, imagine I'm a Bigfoot enthusiast and I've been studying Sasquatch for 30 years. And I am so convinced that the beast is real. And you say, okay, well, you know, 30 years, you must have some evidence. And like, well, yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it multiple times. Oh, so you say you have pictures then, or video? Like, nah, I don't have any actual evidence. Well, then you would say, well, clearly someone was with you that could also saw it with you. And like, no. But I know people who on their own without any evidence or anyone there have also seen it. And you would be like, well, that doesn't seem real. And then I would say, well, okay, I can't prove Bigfoot's real, but you can't prove that Bigfoot is not real. And it's like, well, and that's the thing. It's like, if I'm going to make a claim, the burden of providing evidence is on me. If I make a claim and I don't provide any evidence, you don't have to provide evidence to refute the claim that I haven't supported. So if detox is as good as they say it is, just show some evidence. You know what I mean? Show some high quality evidence. You don't have to prove it. But essentially what they're doing is they're taking a very common sense way to eat. And they're making it sound, they're repackaging it and selling it. And I have a problem with that because it makes the simple choices seem harder. It makes your job harder. Things like this make my job harder because it makes it seem like it puts it on this pedestal where people are like, oh man, I've got to balance my hormones and I've also got to think about optimal liver function. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know where these organs are. Like, I don't even know what that is. How am I going to eat and to balance it out to have like the right amounts? And it just seems like you've got to be a scientist. And it's like, no, just eat some fiber and some protein and drink some water and do that consistently and then build on that. And that's essentially the diet. Don't overconsume calories. You know, and yeah, and if you want to do it even better, add in the different colors and do all these different things and don't worry about organic and all these other things. Like if you want to add that in later, that's cool. You can do that. I have no problem with that. I don't have a problem with organic food. Sometimes I buy organic produce just because it looks better for whatever reason in the store. It just looks fresher because it's been maybe that those got shipped at a different date. I don't know. I buy it sometimes just because it looks better. But sometimes I look at the organic vegetables and I go, ugh. And I'm gonna buy these strawberries that are apparently heavily genetically modified because they're the size of my fist. You know what I mean? But I'm going with that. You know, because one strawberry is going to feed my daughter for like a day, apparently. So I don't know.
Those are good points. Those are really good points you've made when you look at anything that has to do with health. Yeah. Thinking of detoxing and cleansing, the other type we could talk about if you want to are some of the cleanses that promote weight loss, removing those toxins, improving your health in different ways that could be dangerous. And again, this is not a regulated thing. And I look through social media frequently to see things that I know my clients are going to be asking me, and just to know what's out there. And there's a lot of social media accounts that talk about cleanses. They could either be juice cleanses where you fast and just drink juice. They might be a product they're selling. A lot of them promote colonics and different types of enemas. And many of these things can be pretty dangerous. And I'm going to just share one thing. You can put this on the podcast if you want or not. But I came across this woman who apparently had thyroid cancer. And she was told to have a total thyroidectomy. She would need chemo and she would need radiation. And this speaks to me because I had thyroid cancer when I was about this woman's same age. I was 24. I had a total thyroidectomy. I had a year of different radiation treatments. No ill effects. I've been fine ever since. Everything was great. But this woman opted to go to Mexico and see a naturopath, which is fine. And they healed her cancer, apparently, through all of these different things. Hydro immersion, is that what you call it when you go into the ice-cooled baths? And red infrared light therapy, and different foods and infusions she has. But one thing they talked about a lot were coffee enemas. something that she continues to do 3 days a week. And then she does a complete colonic once a week. And she talks about this on her podcast and on her Instagram. And she is this vibrant, healthy looking person. And she tells you to follow me and I'll tell you how to do this. She shows people how to do coffee enemas. And it's pretty bothersome to me because I think there could be someone out there, a young person that has thyroid cancer, like I did. I was getting my master's in nutrition, so I wouldn't have probably fell for that, but who knows? I could have. And are listening to this advice, which may not help them and may actually damage them. And these different types of enemas seem to be a very popular thing right now. And she shows you how to mix this up and how to administer it. So those are the kind of cleanses and detoxes that I get concerned about. Sometimes they're just simple juice drinks that have ginger and lemon juice and a little bit of spicy things. Those things they're not going to do anything. They're fine. We have to remember we have a liver, we have a colon, and we have kidneys that take all of those toxins out of our body. We don't need to get rid of those toxins. But you have to be very careful when you see information like this on social media. And anytime that you're going to do any kind of an enema or a colonic, you have to be really careful that you're having a provider, or if you want to practice holistic medicine and see a naturopath, that's fine, but you need to do that under the guidance of a certified provider to make sure that you don't get dehydrated, that you don't have electrolyte imbalances, and that you aren't harming your body.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just an example of something I've seen out there that I think is pretty serious. I messaged her. I haven't heard back from her. I wrote something that I just wanted to have a conversation, and this is what this looks like to me. So I would just caution viewers that the detoxes that are these liquid enemas, colonics, all they do is make you look like you lose weight when you get on the scale because you've dehydrated yourself and emptied yourself out. And it's often touted for weight loss, and that weight always comes back. And these toxin buildups in our body does take care of most of those. But we go to your diet you just talked about. That type of diet is going to target those more. A diet rich in antioxidants, fiber, and whole foods is going to target those toxins that a lot of people are going on these fast cleanses for. So that's a whole different type of cleanse, and that's the one that concerns me. And I have had people in our hospital who have done some of these pretty serious cleanses in an effort to lose weight and come in pretty bad electrolyte imbalance and metabolic imbalance. So I just wanted to throw those out there as well. I don't know if your viewers are seeing that type of information or not.
It's hard. It's hard to comment on stuff like that because when we really talk about an individual human who had that experience, I don't want to belittle their experience. And
I don't either.
As soon as I start talking about it, it's going to sound like I'm belittling it. But a broken clock is right twice a day. And in the video we just talked about, Lisa Simpson's observation of the rock keeping away tigers. It's like a situation like that. How do we know that she wasn't going to get better on her own? Because people do spontaneously get better.
Right.
And so if that is true, let's run off the assumption that this lady is right. In this clinic, she had diagnosable cancer that would have killed her. And then they did all these treatments and now she doesn't. Okay.
I do think that happened. I mean, I don't have any doubt that happened.
Okay. Yeah. Let's run off that that's assumption that everything here is above board. Can you replicate those results? Was it a fluke? You know what I mean? So, and that's for people who are following her, that's why we do randomized control trials, or if it's not randomized, at least a control trial. And what that means is there is a control group that does not get any intervention. They don't get any treatment. And ideally it's placebo controlled if you can do it. So you've got the thing that you're testing. You have people who think they're getting the thing that you're testing, but you're not. And then you have people who are over here not getting anything at all. And ideally, if you want to do it even better, you're going to match it up with something maybe like a standard of care, maybe like radiation therapy. And we get a big enough sample size and we run it for long enough. And then we look, is there a significant difference? So if the coffee enemas and if this protocol works, it should at least outperform doing nothing.
Correct.
Absolutely outperform doing nothing. And I don't know if it does, but I would be really skeptical with a large enough sample size that any of this has that kind of effect. So not that it didn't have an effect on her, but you know, anything can happen to anyone individually. It's an anecdotal. It's an N of one. So we don't really know. And that's the problem with in pain management. I mean, in the world that I live in, it's just like you can't. If something is the way it is, and then you make one change, and then it changes, that's that post hoc fallacy that Lisa was pointing out. It doesn't mean that a rock keeps away tigers. Like it's just not like it's not. But people will buy that rock time and time again because the people selling the rock are selling it with a ton of compassion. You've got this lady who doesn't have cancer anymore. Of course she's going to be passionate. Of course she wants to share her experience.
Right.
And I don't even think that she should be necessarily prevented for that. She's not a licensed healthcare provider. Talk about whatever you want. It's a free country. Talk about it. But I think that's maybe the point of discussions like this. If people are listening, is to let them know that she may have been one in a million. You know, and I'm not really confident.
Yeah. And thanks for explaining that more eloquently than I did, but that's exactly the point, is we just don't know.
Yeah, and I would go to those clinics. If I had cancer, I would look at those options. I would ask for some research.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and honestly, I would go to my oncologist and be like, look, if I go with the thyroidectomy and the radiation, would getting coffee enemas adversely affect your treatment? And they'll probably be like, nope. Totally other end, total different end of the body. You know, put anything down there that you want. It's not gonna, I would assume they would say that. So maybe I would do both. I don't know. I've never had cancer, so maybe I would do those things. But to make the choice to forego treatment that does have clinical outcomes to do something like that, I'm not even. Again, if people want to do that, I'm totally fine with it. I don't know. When people bring it up, it's like, get some information. Go have a consultation at least.
Right.
And after that, make your call. You know, you got to make that decision if you want to. And if you want to go down that route, more power to you. And I hope it works out.
Right.
But then if it does work out and you're going to make those claims on the internet, you have to realize that you might have been an anomaly. Because if we could treat thyroid cancer with coffee enemas and they could replicate those results, why do we even have surgery anymore?
Right.
Like, I can't imagine that we would go down that route if it was as simple as putting someone in cold water. And I mean, I'm oversimplifying it now, but
and that's just, most people probably wouldn't follow that, but I know there are people out there, based on the clients that I see, that would look at something like that and say, I'm going to try this. I'm going to contact her and see what she did. I don't know that this particular account would say, yeah, follow me. I think she'd probably recommend they go see the provider that she saw, I would hope. But those things are out there and they aren't studied, and we're not sure what's going to happen. And it could be harmful. And that is, I keep talking about the enemas because that is the cleanse that she talks about, how she continues to do that to keep cancer out of her body. So it's just, it's been very interesting to me to follow her. And I'm like you, if this works, hey, why not? But I just think a typical person scrolling through, I don't even know how I happened to come across her account, but scrolling through and sees something like that might just say, hey, maybe if I do coffee enemas, I'll never get cancer. And go ahead and do that and become dehydrated and have electrolyte problems because they're doing it on their own. They're not doing it under the care of a provider or someone who's recommended that. So I just think we need to be careful.
Yeah, you and I have to be careful because we have licenses. So
Yes.
I try and watch what I say, and this podcast verges on the edge of my license a lot because we talk about things that aren't within my scope. But that's why I like to have guests on. When I do solo stuff, it's usually just on my expertise.
Just on your
point. Yeah, and so for people listening to this, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't eat anything, and I'm not saying you should or shouldn't talk to any providers. I'm just saying that there's a ton of marketing out there, and that they're gonna make drinking water and eating fiber sound like they just crack the code on, you know what I mean? They're gonna pick the coolest words, and then you read it and you're like, oh, thanks. Why? But then there's this interesting concept of like, if they're making good choices, is it that big of a deal? I think there's some ethical stuff there. I feel like if I'm going to mislead someone to get them to do something that I think is good for them, that is assuming I know what's better for them than they do. You know what I mean? That's a God complex where it's like, hey, I'm just gonna I'll bend the truth because it's better for them, and it's just like, I don't know if I feel like I feel like, but I feel like that is, even if it's not stated, that is the logic in a lot of different from a lot of different providers, especially when they're very, very, very confident. And I have I feel like the more I'm in practice and the more I learn, the less confident I become. And it's this weird thing where like, I feel like I was way more confident when I graduated from grad school and got licensed because I know all the stuff. And then it's man, you just keep reading papers and seeing patients and you're like, wow, we really don't know much about this, or this is highly variable, or this did not work last time, but for whatever reason it worked this time. And so now when I see people online who are very confident, why are you so how are you confident about anything? And some people will be like, I've been doing this for 40 years. And then but the longer you've been in practice, actually the more of like a polar opposite it gets. Either you are really, really good, like you actually are confident because you know what you're doing and you are replicating these results, or you straight off the path a long time ago and you're just like too blind to see that you are 20 years behind, the rest of your community, and you can't see that. So I think that's hard.
It is hard, and that's that confidence piece changes, especially with nutrition, because if I started this every decade, there's new things I'm teaching, and so my confidence, I should be very confident in what I do, and for the most part I am, but everything changes every other year, so you have to stay up on that. And especially with diabetes right now, there's so many new meds that we don't necessarily see in my practice because big endocrinologists in the cities are using them. So I used to be so confident in my diabetes care, and now since I don't see a lot of the technology in use in our community and some of these meds, I really have to read up a lot, and my confidence is weighing. So I agree with you. When you're overly confident about something, they're trying to fool you a little bit, because I feel confident, but never overly confident in anything I do, because as I'm saying it to you, tomorrow a new research may come up. Next year, something's going to change. It's just ever evolving.
Yeah, I worked with someone.
That's a good comment.
I worked with someone once. I'm not going to give too much information because people would figure out who it is. But there was a conversation where I was advised to ask fewer questions. And I was like, really? I don't really feel like I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. Because I don't know. I don't know when someone walks in with low back pain, exactly what it is, or what's going on, or everything that's contributing. And I was like, well, why don't you ask very many questions? Because I've noticed that, not only are you commenting on it, but I haven't been in the room with you. I noticed you don't ask very many questions. And this person said that they have been doing this for a long time and they've heard everything. And I was just like, all right, well,
Okay.
not coming to you for advice, since
Right.
you automatically know what's going on with just out asking
This
any
patient.
questions, because
Right.
you've seen it so many times. And this person is not a bad person. I actually genuinely like them. But it's someone who's been doing the same thing for a long time and is overly confident and has not changed, has not evolved.
Right.
And and it's just an example of where a very good person who's very well intentioned and very experienced is making mistakes because of the way because they feel like they know that there's just too much confidence, and too much confidence and experience that, they've got rocks and they've never seen any tigers. So, you know what I mean? Like,
I do. I do.
I guess for 30 years, a tiger has never walked through my clinic.
Yeah.
And I've got this vitamin C on the shelf. So, I mean, I don't know. I see that level of confidence, and there are conversations that I'll have behind closed doors. You know what I mean? People aren't going to open up to patients like that, but they may be. I get them talk. We get talking, especially at conferences and stuff, and it's like, whoa, what did you just say? You know what I mean? I don't call people out on it, but people get very bold. I was at a conference not too long ago, and a speaker came up and made some claim. There was a woman who was pregnant, had a very difficult pregnancy. And this person, and this presenter was a great speaker, by the way. She was, I mean, she'd done a TED Talk before. So it was like, I mean, this was, I was hooked. Her description of this pregnancy, this troubled pregnancy, and seen my wife go through 2 pregnancies, I was like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, I'm there with you. And then for the second pregnancy, she described what she does, and the birth of the second child was not hard. And so then she made the claim, the only thing that changed was my treatment. And I was like, put on the brakes there. Whoa. And I'm looking around the room like, am I taking, and everyone's not, there's so many people nodding, like, am I taking crazy pills? Like, what? Like, we're not going to listen to the rest of this, right, guys? Like, this is the only thing that changed. But a lot of things have changed. She had one child and she had never had the experience before. And now she's had a child and she's going into it with other experiences.
Right.
Like, that's a huge change.
Huge.
So I'm not saying that what she did didn't help. I'm sure that it had an effect. But I also, like, there's like 3-year gap in there.
Right.
Nothing else, like nothing's changed. Nothing at all. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just, but that is that fantastic. The room is locked in. We're all healthcare providers and we want to believe. We go into this, we know the title of the presentation. We've seen the notes. We know the speaker. She's amazing. I want to believe everything she says. And she just starts saying stuff. And it's like, now I don't treat pediatric patients very often. And I just don't really like it. And I don't know that there's a whole lot that I can do. So I'm really skeptical of people in my profession who do it. Not to say that it's bad or that they don't help, because surely they do. But I was really curious. But I was going into this talk with a skeptic's mind. I was like, okay, I want to hear a TED Talk quality speaker on something that I don't agree with, because maybe I'm missing something out. And she just started it off with that statement. It's like, everything for the next 2 hours is just going to be, and it wasn't all BS. She killed it. Great presentation. There was a lot of, and I was able to listen with open ears. There was a lot of good stuff in there, but tying it back to the antioxidants and things like that, it's just like, for people listening to this, if someone's coming at you and saying, detox, 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 I'm super confident, we got to balance this and regulate this and do this and do that and do this, I would be highly skeptical. And then still listen, but see what they're recommending. And if they're recommending drinking water and eating colorful vegetables, it's a good plan, but I don't know that I would pay for it. any more than maybe paying them for their time, unless they're going to like actually sit down with you like a registered dietitian and work you through it and hold your hand and do all that. Like if you need that level of support. But if this is just like, you got to pay to play, and then I'm going to send you this PDF and I'm going to give you this cookie cutter detox diet, or I'm going to ship you some really expensive bone broth and almonds that you're going to eat for a week. It's just like, you're getting sold, you know.
Right.
But if you want to be sold, if you really want to buy that rock and keep the tigers away, it's okay. It's probably not going to hurt you, but it might.
Hurt you. Right.
It might though. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like maybe you're going to get dehydrated from these enemas. You know, and maybe tigers can sense dehydration and they'll come regardless whether or not you have a rock or not. I don't know. It's probably, most of this stuff probably is not harmless, even though it's not true.
Right.
But it could be harmful. And even if it in itself is not harmful, if you have something that's diagnosable and following these bogus paths prolongs the gap between you actually getting the care that you need. Well, some of these conditions and these diseases, time is of the essence, and you kind of have to be aggressive if you want to have the outcome. So if you go down a specific route and it doesn't work and you wasted a year, you know, it's just like, it's one of those things. That's when I really start to feel bad for the person, and I get very frustrated at the person who sold that to them. And it's like, you're well-intentioned, but you're way too confident. You know what I mean? Like, you're too confident and you haven't changed, and it's not right. And they're not bad people, but it's just, I don't know. It's such a hard space to navigate. And it's hard for us, but it's even harder for patients. And it's hard, you know, it's hard if someone's been sold and they're doing something and there is a perceived benefit, and you're looking at it and you're like, you know, I don't know. You can't talk them out of it. And if you try, you don't build that therapeutic alliance. So sometimes you got to go with, like, yeah, maybe that, sure, if it's working, keep going.
It's working for you. Yeah.
You know, while you're shooting coffee in that end, can we put an apple in this end? You know, can we do both? Can we
both?
Can we pair them with both? Because I can get on board with that. If you drink a glass of water and eat an apple with it, maybe that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Yeah.
I don't know. Anything else on antioxidants or detox diets or anything like that?
I don't think so.
Okay. I like this episode. This was one where I was like, I don't really know how to prepare for this because I don't really even know how I feel about it, to be honest. But
I just happened to see, I've been following this woman for a while, and when you said we were going to talk about cleanses, I thought I got to bring this up. So if you don't feel like you should include that, that's fine.
No, I want to. I think it's a good story.
She's just, yeah, it's very interesting to me.
I won't put her name up because I'm not trying to blast someone. But if anyone listening to this is like, no, I really want that because I want to contact her, shoot me a message and I'll get with Denise and we'll get you her contact info. Right. And if that woman is for some reason listening to this podcast and she's been able to identify herself, I would be curious to talk to you. We don't have to record it or anything like that, but I have questions, and
it's quite a story, and that's why it's so intriguing to me. I mean, she shows pictures through all her treatment. It's fast. You would be fascinated by it, so I will share it with you. But I think somebody could really just look at that and think, oh my gosh, this is what I have to do. I don't know. I vacillate between thinking, oh wow, this is amazing. Maybe there is something here for people, and thinking, because she does try to sell stuff. She wasn't trying to sell things that wouldn't bother me as much, but every once in a while she'll have something, DM me and I'll, you can buy my program, that type of thing. So I don't know. I've just been watching her for a month or so. It's interesting.
Well, I'm glad she got better.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, she's a young woman. She had 2 kids. She was diagnosed when she was pregnant. And
wow.
She had another small child. And she was quite kind of a mess. But she figured this out and went to this healer in Mexico. pretty interesting.
Well, there
Now
you go.
she does CrossFit, and she's just like this vibrant, healthy person. The other thing she did was drink hydrogen water. Have you heard of that? I haven't heard of that either. I've heard of it.
No.
Is it hydrogen water? Something like that.
Alkaline water?
It wasn't alkaline.
No.
It had something to do with hydrogenated water, which is funny because that's what water is made out of. But it was just, it was something about that too. She drinks that only, and
H3O?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I do think someone in their comments said something like that, something to that. So, anyways,
water now with hydrogen.
Hydrogen.
Technically true. You know what I mean? Like that's what this detox thing. We promote water with hydrogen, so it's better.
It's
like
better.
Oh yeah, this water has hydrogen in it. That's good.
Yeah.
That's funny.